we go. It is 7:33. I will call the East Lyme Zoning Commission meeting to order. Let's please pledge allegiance. Mr. Dwyer. Pledge allegiance.
Oh, Jesus. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. As you may know, I am not Mr. Walker. I am Mr. Donovan filling in for Mr. Walker. We have a couple absences tonight, so I would like to fill at least one of them with Ms. Markovitz, please. Please join us. I'll do the roll call. Mr. Walker is absent. Myself, Mr. Donovan is here. Mr. Dwyer.
Him.
Kim K is absent. Mr. Peck here. Ms. Thurlow is here. Ms. Markovitz is here. Mr. McPherson is absent. Mr. Liska is absent. Mr. Mulholland is here. Fantastic. Brooke Stevens, thank you, is here. Ex officio Roseanne Hardy is here. Public delegations. Public delegations is the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission on subject matters that are not on the agenda. Is there any public delegations from anybody? No. Carrying on. I'm going to read, actually, I'm going to ask Ann to read a letter. We have some public hearings today, and we received a letter from our applicant regarding both of those applications. Ms. Thurlow,
Okay.
please.
To Matthew Walker, Chairman, East Lyme Zoning Commission, in care of William Mulholland. Application of Lori Zrenda, application of Christopher Manwaring. Dear Chairman Walker, I am writing in regard to the above caption proposed regulation changes, and more particularly in regard to the public hearing scheduled for October 7th, 2021. It is my understanding through town staff that there will not be a full commission available to hear these applications, and as to one application, a sitting commission member will be recusing himself. As you are aware, because this is a regulation change, there is a requirement of 4 affirmative votes regardless of the number of members sitting. Given this context and in fairness to the applicant, I am herewith requesting that these matters be opened and continued without testimony to the next regular meeting of the commission, where hopefully we will have a full commission available to sit and review the applications. I thank you in advance for your consideration. Yours very truly, Theodore A. Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Thurlow. Moving on. Public hearing number 1 is the application of Theodore A. Harris, Esquire, for Christopher Manwaring for a text amendment to the East Lyme zoning regulations to add section 8.2 landscaping service company excuse me, as a special permit in the CO zone. The applicant has requested that we open and continue public hearing with no discussion until we have a full commission present. Moving on, public hearing number 2 is the application of Theodore A. Harris, Esquire, for Lori Zrenda for a text amendment to the East Lyme zoning regulations to add to section 11.2 marijuana dispensary as a special permit in an LI zone and add restrictions to section 25.5 table of minimum controls for marijuana dispensary. Again, the applicant has requested that we open and continue the public hearing with no discussion until a full commission is present. Moving on to the regular meeting, seeing that we have continued the public hearings, I will ask for approval of minutes from September 6th. Yes.
Maybe it might be in order to make a motion and vote on continuing.
Thank you, Mr. Peck.
I'll make the motion that we continue both those hearings.
The second.
I have a motion and second from Ms. Thurlow. All those in favor of continuing public hearings 1 and 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstain. Motion carries. Continued. Thank you, Mr. Peck, for that. Now moving on. Approval of minutes of September 16th, 2021.
I have one change.
I noticed also. Please go ahead, Ms.
Um,
Thurlow.
on page 16, where I seconded the motion to approve the meeting minutes from the time before, it said I abstained to vote. I think that was maybe Denise that abstained,
Yes,
because I was there the week before.
yeah, it was me.
Yeah, that's all.
I also did notice, of course now I can't find it. No, what was that?
16, oh.
It was on it. Any other errors? Anyone notice?
For 16 pages of minutes, she did a really good job.
Awesome job.
Amazing.
Awesome job. So then would you like to make a motion as amended?
I do move that we approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstain? Carry on. Old business, we have none. Mr. Mulholland, correct?
That is correct.
New business. Application of Viking Firearms and Training LLC for a special permit for indoor recreation, section 11.2.4, retail sale, section 11.2.5, and office, section 22.1.9, at property identified in the application as 15 Industrial Park Drive, East Lyme, Assessor's Map 26.1, Lot 2. Mr. Mulholland, you will schedule that for a public hearing?
Yes, we will. It'll be on November 4th. It's our tentative schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any business on the floor, any by the vote of commission?
Yeah. I don't think that application number 2 should be here at all. We have,
We cannot discuss that. We opened it with no
This is
discussion whatsoever. So we can bring that up
Next time.
next time, which would be the 21st, if I am correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Both those applications will be rescheduled
Right.
to the 21st for a public hearing. Thank you.
So, Mr. Dwyer, at that time, you can bring that up.
good, thank you.
Okay? You're welcome. Zoning official.
Very briefly, 14th you have a meeting. Please make sure you reserve the agenda, let us know you're coming, and then you have one on the 21st. We'll have a long night that night, because we've added a couple more items, but if we're efficient, we'll be fine.
On both of the 14th and the 21st.
Mostly the 21st will have two, four, I think 6 public hearings, if I'm not mistaken. I've got to go back and look at that, but I think probably that's where we're going to be. And on the 14th, we'll have town attorney here, and we'll have a couple other items on the agenda. So please make sure you let Jen know if you're going to be here, so we can count heads for the hearings and the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland.
Question, couple of questions. How is the Stop and Shop situation?
So they've been noticed. I haven't heard anything either way. He's been silent, but we continue to pay attention. You're talking about the trees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't had a aquifer protection
myself.
committee meeting
Right.
yet.
Right, that's
Been a while.
correct. The COVID, et cetera, and we really haven't had any new businesses. It's still the status quo, but we can schedule one. We'll try to find a slot so we can just kind of get up to date and have a chit chat about that in an official capacity. Probably more like the first meeting in November, I think, is when we have more free time. I think I have one hearing scheduled that night, but I've got to go back and look at the schedule. And if that's the case, then we could do that. As you know, they're usually short and efficient.
Yeah, like 15 minutes. Pretty quick. Have you been to one yet? Yeah, fairly quick.
And the multifamily, state of Connecticut mandate and so forth,
Next week.
That's on
Next
the
week.
14th.
that's on the 14th?
That's correct. Which the town attorney will be here to enlighten us on the legal side of that issue.
And you said the POCD presentation will also happen on that?
That'll be on the 14th.
Prior to that?
Yes, it won't be long, but it'll be probably 10 minutes, Gary.
Right. But first, not last. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Mrs. Hardy.
Good evening. I fully expected to be delivering this report at 10 o'clock tonight, and therefore decided to have mercy on you and make it brief.
I wore a tie and everything.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll just keep it short and give you a break, make it longer next time when you're really exhausted. So the Board of Selectmen met last night, and we approved some additional funds for the use of the rescue funds, and that those meetings should be online by tomorrow, I believe, where you could review, I think there were 7 items, and the board approved 6 and then removed 1 to take under further advisement at the next meeting. So the items that were voted on last evening will now go to Board of Finance for review and for their approval. And if they approve all of the expenditures, then that will be forwarded to a town meeting. We're trying to do these in smaller amounts so that people can really grasp what the parameters are, being very thoughtful, because it seems like every time we read what the requirements are, they seem to change a bit. So I think we're acting prudently and taking time to discuss everything so that we don't involve any additional legal fees. And we have the advice of town council, of course, regarding the appropriateness of any of the items. In particular, though, what might be of interest to your board is the approval of funds for new Yale Charette study. If you recall, for some of you old-timers, such as myself, it's been 25 years since they did their last report. And this would be an update, which would include Flanders this time, to see what we could do to kind of spruce things up and maybe look at things a little differently, and get some advice from some professionals at a fairly reasonable price. So I'm open to any questions you might have. Otherwise, I'm going to sit down.
Anyone?
Mr. Dwyer.
Is the town going to make a referendum for or against marijuana?
Not until we see what action your board takes.
Funny.
Not until we see what action your board takes. We would, if
Isn't
you,
that backwards?
It
Shouldn't
is.
you go first?
no, because we would not spend the money, pardon me if I pull this down a little bit, we would not want to spend the money on legal fees and assistance in developing an ordinance if, in fact, your board didn't approve the request in the first place. So you'll be first. So your board has to approve.
But we don't run referendums for the whole town.
Well, the point is that you would have to make the decision. This would then have to come to the Board of Selectmen to draft an appropriate ordinance to be able to enforce this, whatever you decide or not. And then approval of any ordinances require a town meeting. So I do not think that we would be considering a referendum, but we would be following what we normally do for an ordinance approval is through the town meeting process.
Mrs. Hardy, if I may, I did watch the last couple minutes of the meeting last night because I was unable to make it there.
Yes.
So they did have the town attorney draft up a town ordinance,
Oh,
basically like a 6 month ordinance more or less just to have a grasp of how it's all going to play out within the town. But it has nothing to do with our decision in terms of a business. It's more so, you know, like drinking alcohol, walking down the street, smoking cigarettes outside a restaurant, that type of deal. It has nothing to do with the business aspect that the zoning board creates.
I disagree with you.
allows.
I disagree. No, I think if something is illegal, why are we making text amendments? That's my problem. Unless the town says, okay, marijuana is approved in this town on the referendum,
Thank you, Mr.
then
Hardy.
we could act on it. Until then, I don't think we should be acting on it. My point is, it's up to a referendum whether it's legal or not on having marijuana.
It's the state, Mr.
The
Mulholland.
state is all right. We're talking about the town.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dwyer, we'll have more information for you in the near future, which should clarify this issue. I've spoken to town attorney, I've spoken to the first selectman that came to see me today to bring me up to speed on what they did last night. I think at this particular time, there should be no discussion of the proposed text amendment, which is irrelevant to the overall discussion. We'll address those issues in the near future, but we want to be very careful. We have an applicant who has a client. We want to ensure we're legal. So I will ensure that you are brought up to speed. Town attorney will be here in 2 weeks, so that may be a question before we get started on other items that we can ask
Good.
of him.
I'd like a lawyer's
Clarification,
opinion.
And so we'll move that forward there. So that should provide some comfort for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr.
understand.
Dwyer.
It seems like information's going around, but we're not getting it. On the referendum, are they going to have a referendum or not going to have a referendum? That's my problem.
Again, reiterating what
No,
Mr.
no, I'm
Mulholland
just-
said, yeah.
I'm telling you what my position is.
I understand. Yep, I understand. Mrs. Hardy.
I think that if you wish to have a referendum, the appropriate thing would be to come before the Board of Selectmen and request that a referendum be held on the issue.
I would think they would take the lead as leaders of the town.
Well, I'm not going to argue the
Oh,
point
no,
with
no,
you,
I'm-
Mr. Dwyer, but the town isn't going to go through the expense of a referendum.
I don't want to talk money, please.
The town
It's got
isn't,
nothing to
the
do with
town
it.
isn't going to go to the expense of a referendum and attorney's fees if there is not interest from the public. If there's a demand from the public that they want that's brought to a referendum, then then such a proposal request should be made to the Board of Selectmen.
But how does the town get the information unless it comes from the Board of Selectmen?
You and whoever else was interested in signing would send a request to the Board of Selectmen that this is your opinion, that this should be brought forward to a referendum.
That's my opinion.
And so then you should proceed with that and send a letter to, or make an appearance before the Board of Selectmen and state your reason why you would like to have this be a referendum that all residents could vote on.
Now, Mrs. Hardy, am I also correct in assuming that if the Board of Selectmen does happen to come up with a ordinance, and then the townspeople do not agree with that, they can petition to have a referendum, right? Am I understanding
That is one
correctly?
route. That is one route, yes.
Yeah. So, Mr. Dwyer, it ultimately is up to the public.
That-
And I
that's what
think we should just-
That's my main concern.
Yeah, it is totally up to the public, and I think we should move on from here because we could talk about this all night long. So, granted, our night's short, but still, you know,
I'm basing this on past experience.
I understand. How long have you been around, Mr. Dwyer?
Well, when bingo was first brought in, it went to a referendum. Bingo.
Bingo.
And there
Yeah,
was 1,000 people at the town hall, or at the school.
yeah, I gotcha. All right, moving on. Thank you, Mrs. Hardy. Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Comments from the zoning board liaison to planning. The next meeting is October 12th, and our next two participants have swapped, so we'll go on from there. Comments from the chairman. I believe he's in Florida. So,
Is that a wedding?
yeah, so I'll fill in. It's been fun. I wore a tie for, what, an hour? You gotta understand, I'm in construction. This is really tight. Whatever, but,
Like a noose.
yeah, right? So, other than that, I think we're doing well. We're staying busy. We're doing good. Get ready for some fun. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
Why, where are we going?
You apparently nowhere.
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.